Says if you aren't on Facebook as an artist, you don't exist. MySpace was the perfect model for social media. Stupid stuff like aliens or ghosts or... I can't even begin to imagine how to remix that track. How do you find the right record label? Or what's your opinion about sending songs for editorial review? Would you consider using Reason Rack in your productions? Yes, I make a lot of music using the creator kits. Can you monetize those? So 0.0001 times 2 times 365 equals 0.073 times 90 equals £6.57. Hey guys, welcome to the Kane audio vlog. It's Friday. It's time for another Ask Me Anything. Usual rules apply. Comment anything you want below this video and I'll get back to you in next week's video. Before I look at last week's video, is there anything I need to mention house admin wise? Let me have a look. I usually write stuff down. I don't remember writing anything down. I'm a bit out of breath because I've just been running up and down the stairs. No, I don't think so. What have I been doing this week? I've been filming some stuff for Sonic Academy. I've decided that the Patreon money for now I am going to put towards a Hackintosh, and I will film that Hackintosh building and go through that for Patreon members. So if you are a member of my Patreon community, then I will be doing some exclusive stuff for you guys. I mean, you can see how much money goes in, I think, on my Patreon page. There'll be a link below this video. So yeah, so it's going to take a while, I think, but yeah, let's do it, because I was thinking the other day, I need to upgrade or update at least the OS, and the easiest way of doing that, weirdly, is what should be the hardest way of doing it, is by putting together a Hackintosh. So I figured it's going to happen at some point. If at any stage I decide it doesn't work, then I can always sell it or whatever. So I don't think there's going to be any wastage, so let's just go for it. I think building a Hackintosh will be fun, to be honest. So there we go. What else? Sonic Academy, Patreon. I think that's pretty much it. We're now in between dates. We've got Here's the Drop coming out in a couple of weeks, so I'll mention that in next week's AMA. I think that is all I need to mention for now. Apologies if you can hear a baby crying in the distance. That is my firstborn son. Don't worry, he's not unsupervised. He's with his mum, but he's been a bit of a grouch today. So there we go. Right, let's have a look. Last week's video. Ask Me Anything 71. FanFan87. Perfect. High five as these vlogs. Salut Dom. My question this week concerns communications on internet. It irritates me like a lot when someone says if you aren't on Facebook as an artist, you don't exist. I find it very sad and not very human way to think. Okay, before I read any more on that, I agree with you. It is... it's a weird world that we live in, and I think some people get bit too carried away with that mindset of social media meaning everything. I think and, you know, I've kind of touched on that before, but I do think that genuinely the world is kind of changing at the minute. You know, if you look at Instagram are apparently removing the numbers of likes or something, so you don't get to see how many likes something has. I think that's a good idea, because there shouldn't be so much importance on these things. So there we go. if tomorrow Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and all the big social medias collapse, crash forever, what would you do to promote yourself and your music, courses, knowledge? Would you find/create a collective of producers? Would you create your own website? So, first of all, I have my own websites, because I have one for me as an artist and I have one for my studio as a studio. Even though they're both me, I try and separate those two things. So domkane.com will be just all about me and me as a DJ/producer. So that tends to be catered more towards people interested in maybe booking gigs or having me perform as an artist in one way or another. Whereas kaneaudio.com is more about my sound design work, licensing, TV sync stuff, yeah, that kind of stuff. So yeah, so website. I think we should all have a website anyway. And I'm gonna take this opportunity to give a big shout out to Vibecast. A friend of mine, Jack, who runs Vibecast, is an incredible web developer, and he's put together Vibecast website, which is specifically for DJs and producers to build your own website, and it's super easy to use. So actually, if you go to domkane.com, that is a Vibecast site. I've parked my domain on there, and yeah, and I highly recommend them. So yeah, there's that. A collective of producers. I've seen there's a lot of collectives out there. There's a few on Twitter and YouTube, I think, that have... I know some of you watching this are part of a collective, and I know that some of you that tweet me somewhat regularly are part of a collective. I can't remember which ones of you, but the number of times I've looked at it and thought, that's great, that's genius, I love that. I love the fact that you guys are able to promote each other and help support and develop and give feedback, and that's exactly what the music industry should be like, and that's exactly what social media should have been invented for. So I can't encourage and endorse that enough. It's not something I was ever fortunate enough to be able to be a part of at the beginning. However, we've got these weekly AMAs that, you know, all you guys downloading the podcast or watching on YouTube or whatever, you know, I think a few of you, a fair amount of you, are also members of the Dom Kane producer group on Facebook. And again, I love watching some of the stuff, the music you post. I like listening to it, and I like seeing you guys give each other encouragement and feedback and being critical of each other's work, or constructive. It's great to see. And I think that's all down to social media. So if social media collapses, how do you do the collective of producers? I don't know is the answer. But yeah, I think social media is really important, and I think this is the point I'm trying to make, is that social media is really important to be social. And I think some people treat social media as though it is nothing more than a marketing platform, and it can be used as a marketing platform, but I think if you only treat your social media as a marketing platform, it very quickly becomes very boring and very stale, and that's not what social media should be about, and I think that can't last very long, is I guess my view. This thought makes me wondering the same cases on medias in general, making 80% of their audience by Facebook because they don't attract internet users on their own sites. So I guess you're talking about the getting traffic. I mean, look, Facebook, as an example, is terrible for musicians and DJs because, first of all, so using my own Facebook page as an example, it has 14,000 likes. So let's call it 14,000 fans. Of those fans, when I post something on Facebook, very few of them actually get to see what it is I posted. So I'm a fan of, so I like the page of Craftwork, for example. Now I know Craftwork don't post very often, but if they did post something on Facebook, am I going to see it? I want to see it. How can I see it? You know, so the only way I can really get to see any posts by Craftwork, let's say, is if I go to their page and go to set the default settings so that you always get notified when they post something. Well, okay, that's fine. But for Craftwork, that's not a problem, because Craftwork probably, I haven't looked, but I'm guessing they don't post very often. They're not exactly social media gurus, and that's why I'm using them as an example, because they're the kinds of people that you can go, right, I'll just get every notification from them. But there are other artists out there who use social media as social media and post maybe 3, 4, 5 times a day. Well, you're not going to switch on notifications for that, but you do want the odd update. You do want to see stuff in the timeline, and Facebook tends to throttle that. And the reason they throttle it is because as an artist, they want me to boost all my posts, and they want me to pay for my fans to see my posts, which is complete opposite to YouTube, for example, where the fans, the viewers, pay by watching adverts, and the ad developers pay YouTube money, and then the content creators get some of that money. So it means that we're not just creating content for free, although I am, because I don't have adverts, because I don't have enough whatever subscribers and views and all of that, and my channel isn't monetized yet. But at some point it'll become monetized, and I guess I'll get $10 a month, or probably not even that much, but whatever, it's something. The point is that the business model works, whereas with Facebook it's all upside down. Basically you have to create the content for free and then pay to let other people watch it. It makes no sense, but that's kind of the way it is. Instagram deleting all the likes and whatever, again, that's gonna change things hopefully for the better. So it's a bit of a weird time to be using social media, I think. But how do you know, when, let's be real, most of us spend most of our time sat on Facebook on our phone just scrolling, you know, or Reddit or whatever. Personally, I use Reddit more than anything else. But, you know, we just sit there scrolling forever because it's an infinite scrolling line. To then click on a link takes you to another site, and then you have to go back, and that becomes annoying. And so going to external websites for the time being is kind of annoying, and we don't do it. So yeah, I don't know. But what I would say is that just to finish off this weird rant that doesn't have much information on, I'll try and do a proper comparison maybe at some point, but I have a Kane Audio Facebook page and a Kane Audio website, which I mentioned earlier on, and I get way more traffic on my Kane Audio website than I do on my Facebook page. For the Dom Kane artist stuff, I think it's probably more on Facebook. So I think that kind of shows you a bit of a difference. And also Facebook, and I've always said this about Facebook, they missed a huge opportunity here. MySpace was amazing. MySpace was the perfect model for social media when it came to musicians, at least. Because as a consumer, as a fan, you could follow a musician's page, and you'd instantly have, say, 10 of their latest tracks that you could listen to, and then you could look at their top friends, and usually it was a similar artist, and you go, ooh, who are they? And you'd click on them, and then you'd listen to their music and go, oh, I like these guys as well, and you'd follow them, and then you'd see who their top 10 friends were, or whatever it was, I can't remember. And you know, you could browse new musicians on Facebook. If you go to my Facebook fan page, first of all, you can't even listen to my music on my Facebook fan page. What the hell's up with that? You can look at my photos, and you can watch a few videos, but there's no real sort of music player built in. That to me just seems completely weird for a social media platform that offers business pages. Second of all, there's no other way of browsing. You can't discover someone on Facebook other than someone maybe in your timeline sharing something. But again, they're not sharing music, they're sharing a video or a photo. So the only way for me to become discovered on Facebook is if I create a viral meme photo or create a video that's somehow visually stunning as well as musically. And I'm a musician. I'm not a filmmaker. I'm not a photographer. I'm a musician and I make music. And so how am I supposed to be able to market myself on a platform that doesn't let me promote music? The only way I can promote music on Facebook is by publishing something like a SoundCloud link or a Spotify link, and we know Facebook throttle those links because they link to external websites. And even aside from Facebook throttling them, people don't click on them because it opens an external website, and we're all dumb consumers wanting to permanently scroll forever in one page, and clicking on another page, no thanks, that's too much work, you know. So it's kind of a weird area with Facebook. So I ended up on another rant there, sorry. Bringing it back to, if you aren't on Facebook as an artist, you don't exist. I disagree with that, because if you're on Facebook, you barely exist. And if you are on Facebook and you're doing big things on Facebook, then you're not a musician. You're not a real musician, because you're a social media guru or a marketing engineer or some meme creator or whatever. Because show me someone who got famous, and I mean, by famous I mean successful by DJ bookings and performances and releases and remix. Show me an artist of substantial quality and success that garnered that substantial quality and success by posting just music and nothing, no viral videos, no Twitter beef, no stupid memes, no whatever. You know, show me someone who just got there through music on social media, and I'll show you a flying unicorn. So there we go. Cheers, and yes, we shouldn't be tolerant with intolerance. And ho, a random question appears. Which books and which movies / series / documentaries did you watch that inspired you to think what you think of the world today? Ooh, there's a question. I don't know. I've never been good at reading novels. I've always read textbooks, but I have liked a few sort of biographical books. I'm a huge fan of Bertrand Russell. I think he shaped a lot of the way I think. As much as I don't necessarily consider myself a communist or Marxist, I have read the works of Karl Marx and I've always been fascinated by that. Yeah, so movies and series and documentaries. I don't know. I mean, I mean, it's no secret I'm a huge fan of sci-fi films. Documentaries, I like a lot of documentaries, but I try to steer clear from all the bullshit propaganda ones that are, you know, conspiracy theory crap and all of that. So for example, I have Amazon Prime. I don't look at any of their documentaries because they're 99% rubbish. You know, stupid stuff like aliens or ghosts or, you know, I don't know, whatever it is. I don't look at them. I have no interest in them. I also, as much as I respect and admire and applaud veganism and vegetarianism, I won't watch any of their documentaries because, Well, because they're just a bit too on the nose. So yeah, I don't know where does anyone get their views on the world? I don't know. It's a good question, but a difficult one. And goodbye. Cheers. Right, moving on. Are we on time? 20 minutes? Yeah, fine. Deadly Custard, perfect, high five. I can't even begin to imagine how to remix that track, so looking forward to hearing what you've created very much, along with all the others. Regarding Spotify, when you put it like that, makes me want to actually release some music. I'll have to put in the effort to finish some stuff off. Yes, so remixing the deadmau5 track, which is what we were talking about last week, yeah, it was kind of an ordeal, and if I'm 100% honest, I don't think it's my proudest work, because I kind of feel like I don't know, artistically I feel like I forced myself too much, but who knows. I don't know what the end result is, and it's always difficult to judge your own work anyway, so I'll let you guys judge it instead. And yeah, and finally on Spotify thing, definitely, it's one of those things that I think once you realise that actually there's a huge world of opportunities in the streaming model, then it can kind of change a lot of things for people. And I think if you put less precedence on the instant hit singles releases and CDs and whatever, then you know, it's just a different bit of the industry, and a lot of people don't like it. A lot of people just don't understand it. But yeah, definitely finishing music and releasing it is the first step. So yeah, I am going to reset my camera now. I can hear the baby still crying, so I'm just going to double check everything's okay, and I'll be back in a sec. Okay, I'm back. Where the hell was I? Herman Catry. Hi, how do you find the right record label? There are many record labels out there, and most of them don't even know how to market and just post on their channels. Yes. So, yeah, I've always kind of said, I don't know, it's a tricky one, and I know I have to be careful in saying all of this. There are lots of very small record labels out there who are run by one person, and I think if a record label is run by one person who is also a music producer and DJ and is not already super famous, then you kind of need to question the motives of that person. Don't get me wrong, that the motives could be perfect, and I'm not saying there's any guarantee that it's bad or whatever, but I do feel like you kind of need to just be sure that the motives are right and everything's in the right place. And so also, you know, there used to be an old saying of how to have $1 million in the music industry: start with 2 million. You know, running a record label was inherently a bit of a loss leader in many ways. So nowadays, running a record label, it's so easy to set up a record label that there's no quality control, there's no filter, there's no anything like that. So there are very few record labels that actually market themselves really, really well. So you're almost answering your own question there, in how do you find the right record label? Well, maybe the right record label should find you, because if they're doing a good job at marketing, then they're probably already in your radar anyway. I always used to recommend to people to go to Beatport and, you know, listen to one of their own tracks and then find similar tracks, whatever genre that is. Let's say you make techno and you go to Beatport and go to the techno genre, listen to the top 100 and just listen to them all, and find a couple of tracks that maybe sound like they're similar to yours, or at least would mix with yours very well, or sit on the right label. And that's the point I'm trying to get home here, is find out which labels do you think your tracks would sit well with. And then, you know, and if you see maybe there's a couple of names of labels that keep popping up in the top 100, then clearly they're doing something right. And it's not an instant thing, and you know, you can't just expect to do that once and then go, oh, that's the label I have to sign with, and that's it. It's not as easy as that. You need to keep doing it every week and keep checking and keep coming back and seeing, is that label consistently hitting the mark? And then, you know, go to that label's latest releases, and are a lot of them reaching the chart, or is it just a few of them? Or are they releasing, you know, 100 tracks a week and one of them happens to hit the charts? And in which case, that's probably not a great label. Certainly if they're releasing 100 tracks a week, it's definitely not a good label. So, you know, you have to go into it with a bit of common sense, but there needs a relationship with a record label should be a two-way relationship. You know, they should like your music and want your music, and you should like their other releases and want to be a part of that. And, you know, it should be a two-way conversation. I don't think, you know, a record label in this day and age especially is just a tool for getting music out there. It should be a lot more than that. It should be, you know, almost like the collectives we were talking about earlier on. You know, I guess that's more the job of a good modern record label these days. So yeah, so it's not easy, but at the same time, it's almost easier, I guess. So it's a bit of a weird one, but you know, like I say, you should want to be on that label as much as the label wants to have you, and it should be a two-way street. And I guess in this day and age, you know, maybe if you feel that it's a very small record label, let's say it's a one-man band record label, and, you know, they don't have much money for marketing or whatever, then maybe you can work with them on that and, you know, make it a joint effort. But, you know, maybe increase your royalty split or something. And if that label is any good, if the person running that label is any good, then they should be biting your hand off for that offer anyway. So, yeah, nothing is set in stone in the music industry, and we need to remember that. Just because most record labels offer 50-50 splits and most record labels take on the marketing costs themselves, nothing says that all of that has to be set in stone. You know, you could pay for your marketing on top of theirs, or maybe both work together on a marketing plan and strategy. You know, I've done that lots of times with various record labels. So yeah, there we go. Dreamstate 42. Hey Dom, perfect. High five. Really interesting to hear your thoughts, or rant as you like to call it, about Spotify and Spotify playlists, which brings me to my question. First one in a few weeks. I've started uploading my music to Spotify really only because a few friends asked me to do so, without any ambitions in regards to plays, exposure or whatever. It was always funny to say I have 11 followers and I know them all by name. At some point, people I didn't know by name followed too, which of course was and is amazing. Knowing people like my music enough to follow. So I started thinking if I should set my personal goal for music to one day get one of my songs on an editorial playlist. Enough with the story, here's my question. Do you have experience with, or what's your opinion about sending songs for editorial review? Should I try submitting just about every song I upload, or approach it more along the lines of how you talked about approaching labels, i.e. only submit a handful of songs down the road after getting more experience and really honing my craft? That's a good question. And I actually don't know the answer, if I'm honest. And I feel like it's probably something I should know the answer to. But I because Spotify is such a new thing, I don't know how their playlist submissions work, because I do know that when I have an EP scheduled for release, for example, I have an opportunity to submit one of those tracks to be playlisted, and you fill in a little form that is the genre and you write a little piece about it and whatever. Now, I don't know where that goes or what happens beyond that. I have had tracks playlisted, I have had tracks editorial playlisted, but I don't know, was that down to me or was that down to maybe Mousetrap? I also know that before this submission system came in, there was a guy who was kind of the lead guy for electronic dance music playlists, and I knew of him and had been introduced to him a couple of times, so I knew that he was kind of a guy I should send some music to and sort of let him know I've got this release coming out, hopefully it'll do well. But that, I don't think that is a thing anymore, because I'm guessing it's all sort of self-fulfilling, where you know, the self-service side. So I don't, what I'm trying to say is I don't know, when I hit that submit button, I don't know if it's an AI bot that just looks at the track and my previous track popularity and goes, this is a 50-50, right, we'll send it to a human, or whether it goes to a human who just listens to it and goes, no, this is terrible, or yes, this is fantastic. So I don't know what happens at the other end. So if it went to a human, for example, and there was only one human dealing with all of these things, then I would say be very careful in what you send, and only send your absolute best work that you think 100% fits in a playlist, because otherwise you'll just be kind of blacklisted as spamming. But if it is a bot, can you blacklist and consider spam to a bot? I don't know. So I don't know the answer to that. Personally, I would only send you best work to go for playlisting. But a way of doing that, and again, I don't know what if they have a point system, like looking at, have you been on other people's playlists, for example. So, you know, it's always worth browsing Spotify and seeing what cool playlists there are that maybe your music would fit onto. You know, there's a lot of amateur playlists out there that have thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of followers. So, you know, sometimes it might be a case of finding who curates those playlists and asking yourself, you know, if it's worth maybe sending it to them. You know, it's not just the editorial playlists. By the way, completely agree with your statements on tolerance, especially since I've heard of the paradox of tolerance, Karl Popper, for the first time. Yeah, so that's what I was kind of referring to, was the Karl Popper paradox of tolerance. Have a great weekend and upcoming week. Then we've got Andrew Hollis. Perfect, high five. When Reason by Propellerhead came out many years ago, it was a real fresh look at music production. I remember quite a few dance producers used it. Personally, I always loved the idea of the rack and the patching system, but could not get on with the arrangement side, especially the GUI. Fast forward to version 11, and are they on version 11 already? And the option of having the rack as a VST in another DAW, and the demise of Rewire. Do you think it's a last-ditch attempt to maintain a market share of the DAW market, or too little too late? Would you consider using Reason Rack in your productions? Well, first of all, I didn't know Reason Rack was a thing. That's pretty cool if you can have Reason running as a VST, because yeah, I did use Reason and Rebirth, which I think came out before Reason, in the late 90s. Yeah, it must have been late 90s was Rebirth, and I remember sitting there making all the wibbledy wobbledy acid sounds on a PC. And then, so when Reason came out, I remember using that, probably version 1, I guess. And I used that for a good year, I think. And I enjoyed it. But yeah, the arrangement side, it was, you know, there were things like, so you couldn't manipulate audio very well without chopping up into samples. And then even then, it was only MIDI triggered, I think. And there were lots of things that you couldn't do, whereas you could on well, Cubase and Pro Tools were really the alternatives back then. So yeah, so I kind of veered away from that, and I think I went to, well, Nuendo, which is like Cubase, but yeah, basically Cubase. Yeah, so I think Reason was great. You know, there's still a lot of producers out there that use Reason. I wouldn't say it's a last-ditch attempt at anything, because as far as I'm aware, it's still a fairly popular DAW. I don't think it was ever the most popular, and I don't think it was ever trying to be honest. But I do know that the guys behind Propellerhead software have done some fantastic work, and they seem to be very well respected in the industry. So I don't think it's a last ditch attempt. I'm sure you don't mean it in a derogatory way. But yeah, so but the fact that having a rack as a VST in another door, and the demise of Rewire, I didn't know there was a demise of Rewire. Maybe I should keep my head out the sand a bit longer. But yeah, that's interesting if they're offering it as a VST in another door, because I did like the fact that you could sort of plug and play all the different racks, and that was pretty cool. Would you consider Reason Rack in your productions? Yeah, 100%. In all honesty, I don't know if I'd actually use it, because I don't really feel like I have a need for it right now. I'm, having not used Reason for 20 years, I'm okay with not using Reason. So, but that's nothing against Reason. I'm sure it's come on leaps and bounds, but I know that back in the early versions you couldn't have VSTs, whereas Cubase you could have a VST, so that was a huge difference. But I'm pretty sure all of that's fine these days, and I'm guessing all the MIDI automation and whatever is pretty straightforward now, as it should be in all doors. So I should imagine it's a perfectly good door. I've just not looked at it because I've not needed to. So yeah, that's that. Brendan James: I am such a big fan. I'm making music now, but I'm very curious about the process. I make a lot of music using the creator kits. Can you monetize those? I don't know what you mean by creator kits. If you mean loops packs, then I'm not sure what you're meaning by monetize those. So you can monetize the loops packs by making loops packs and selling them as royalty free. If you're talking about monetizing music from the loops packs, then yes, because if it's royalty free. However, you cannot resell the sound as is. So for example, if you were to buy a loops pack and there was a bassline loop that you loved, and you just used that bassline loop on its own for 30 seconds, you can't sell that as a piece of work, because it's not a piece of work. That's just someone else's loop that you're now reselling. So yeah, there are kind of limitations on that, but pretty obvious ones. If you mean creator kits, as in the creator kits that come with Bitwig and Ableton and stuff, same rules apply. Yeah, so let me know, drop another comment in this one in what you mean by creator kits. I think that hopefully I've covered what you mean. Otherwise I don't know. Yanis Lockmanis: hi Dom, perfect, high five. Zombo: nice video Dom, have a great weekend, perfect, high five. Got any advice for me, because I have just finished 2 tracks and now I hate them. Is this normal, because I really liked them when I was making them, and after finishing them I hate them? Sorry for my broken English. It's perfectly normal, I think. There are very few tracks that I've made that I genuinely like to date. In fact, I know I've kind of talked about this before. There was a track that I thought was called Saved, but it wasn't called Saved. It was called Space. I've forgotten again. There was a track I did 100 years ago. That I have listened to when I spoke about this in an AMA a few months back, and I've forgotten the name again, but there was a track that I did that I now listen back and I think, you know what, that was quite cool. It was totally different. It was not one that was going to ever sell big numbers or anything. It was just quirky, weird, but I liked it, and I still do. Another track I did, which I named Tonal Display, much like the name of my not podcast, playlist on Spotify. Tonal Display I still like. I mean, obviously the production values are kind of horrendous compared to today's standards, but yeah, I still like that as a track, just because it was kind of funky and it all kind of fell together. I'm okay with most of the music I've been putting out for the last 3, 4, 5 years, I'm okay with it, and I think that's about as good as it's going to get. Yeah, I wouldn't say I love my music, but I love making it, and that's the important bit. So I feel like that's an important thing to get across. It's for me, it's the process of creating the music and then performing the music if I'm at a gig or something like that, and seeing other people's reactions to the music. So there are kind of two sides to it. So for me, I love creating the music in the studio, but I don't tend to listen to it afterwards, not much. There are a few tracks that I've written for my album that I have actually listened to a lot, because I want my album, the whole kind of aim of my album is that it's gonna have some club tracks and whatever. It's gonna be some fairly, you know, what you'd expect from Dom Kane, but there's also going to be, hopefully, as many tracks as I can be that are more kind of ones that you can just kind of sit down and listen to and just enjoy for what it is. And I think I've nailed that with at least 2 or 3 of the tracks so far. So yeah, anyway, I think it's perfectly normal to kind of just hate your music afterwards, especially when, and I've said this to people before, to me this is kind of a measurement of learning and a measurement of where you are, because when you're really early in your production journey, you tend to hate everything. You know, you write a track and a week later last week's track sounds really old and dated because you've learnt so much in that week. And then, you know, maybe a couple of years into your journey, you'll write a track and then it'll take 2 months for you to hate it, because you'll have learnt more in that 2 months, and now you've moved on to a different production technique or a different whatever. You know, there's something different that you're changing, and it's all just part of your journey of moving forward. So, you know, you are looking forward rather than looking back, which is a good thing. And I think, you know, if you're hating your track within a week or 2 of making it, then it's probably too early to be releasing that music, because you don't want to be releasing music that you're not going to be proud of in the future. I mean, we're going to be doing it, but you don't want to be doing it. Which is why I say for the last 4 or 5 years, I'm okay with all of my music. And I think that's about as good as it's going to get. I certainly don't hate it, which makes me go, okay, well, I think I'm an okay producer, and that's about as good as it's ever going to get in my head. So yeah, do not worry if you're hating your own music. It's just part of learning, and it probably means that if you hate that track, it probably is because you've just learnt loads of new other things, or tried something that you thought was really cool afterwards, and so by you hating that previous track, it just means you're learning more stuff and getting better. So that's a good thing, really. Fin Fighter, perfect, high five. And last but not least, St. Nicholas. Okay, so £0.0001. Let's say you live for 90 years and you listen to one track twice a day for your entire life. So 0.0001 times 2 times 365 equals 0.073 times 90 equals £6.57 per person who plays a track twice a day for 90 years. Doesn't seem like a lot. No, it doesn't. I get what you're saying about the playlists. I was surprised. So let's stop on the math there first. First of all, your assumption here is that I write a track and only one person listens to it twice a day for 90 years. Well, what if 1 million people listen to it twice a day for 90 years? Then you've just earned £6.57 million. All of a sudden doesn't seem so bad. And that's kind of the point, is that, you know, you might start with just having 10 people listening, or 100 people listening, or 1,000 people listening, and you're getting a few pence here and a few pence there, but it builds up. And the really important bit is the fact that growth grows. So it might be 10 people listening twice a day for the first week. It might be, in 6 months' time, 100 people listening twice a day. In 2 years' time, it might be 100,000 people listening twice a day. And that track is still there and is still getting playlisted, and maybe it's going in more people's playlists over time. But if you compare this to that, let's say I wrote that same track and released it on Beatport, and I sell 1,000 copies in the first week, boom, great, is a hit. Maybe it goes #1 on Beatport, brilliant. 1,000 copies times, what does the artist really get? 10p, 20p? So 1,000 copies of that, you're talking a few quid, basically. It's nothing. And then after the first week, everyone's forgotten about it. It's no longer on the front page of Beatport. It's dropped out of the charts. It's now in old releases that no one is ever going to scroll to on Beatport when they're looking at new releases. So how do people find it? They don't. It's gone. That's it. So you've just written that track. You had a hit on Beatport, and I begrudgingly call it a hit, because if it's a hit on Beatport, great, you sold, what, 1,000 copies. It's not changing the world, is it? And then after a week, it's gone. Oh, maybe 2 weeks at the most. It's gone. And then it's to, what, never be heard again. Well, I'm sorry, but that's not appealing to me. As an artist, I want people to enjoy my work in the future at some point. I want to be able to enjoy my own work in the future. I want it to pop up every now and then where I can go, oh yeah, I remember that. That was a great track. I like a memory, you know? So yeah, so I think that's a really important factor to consider there. I get what you're saying about the playlists. I was surprised to learn that you have received more revenue from Spotify than download sites and other streaming services. Perfect. High five. Yeah, and that's kind of exactly my point, is that the streaming services, I'm going to be honest, it's only Spotify right now. All the other streaming services, I have no idea what they are or how much they make or whatever. Apple Music, piss all. I'll be honest, Apple Music and iTunes as a whole, don't get me wrong, I make dance music. The old school business model was focused at Beatport anyway, so iTunes was never going to make a huge amount. DJs didn't buy their music from iTunes necessarily, because you got, what it was, MP4 versions, and that's not what DJs wanted. They wanted an MP3. So iTunes was never the go-to place for DJs. So understandably, iTunes never did particularly well, and Apple Music, I'm sure it does well for big artists, but I feel like they kind of missed a boat, much like Facebook and comparison to MySpace that I was talking about earlier on. The recommendations in Apple Music were great for the curated stuff by Apple staff, but there was no other playlists. I couldn't follow my mate down the road who had a great playlist of whatever kind of music. I couldn't follow his playlist on Apple Music, and to my understanding, there isn't a way for an artist to create their own playlist and share it publicly on Apple Music. I know, because I've tried, because this Spotify playlist that I do, everyone go out and follow it. Oh, by the way, I've updated it this week. I should have said that in the house admin at the beginning of this. I've updated it this week, so there's another hour and a half of fresh music on Dom Kane Presents Tonal Display on Spotify, and it's free. Yeah, so when I put together that playlist at first, there were a couple of people that got in touch saying, can you do equivalent for Apple Music, because I use Apple Music and I don't use Spotify and I don't pay for Spotify. And I ended up getting in touch with Apple saying, why can't I do this? I can't work out how to put together a playlist. And they basically said you can't. So yeah, screw that. There we go, on a happy ending to a happy vlog. I think that is it, my friends, for this week, and I'm going to look for a keyword for you to prove that you have made it this far into the video. And I'm going to say, comment the word helicopter. I was going to say comment the word Thatcher, because it's Stuart Lee Scooby-Doo Thatcher routine, which is a classic Stuart Lee routine, and I adore his comedy. But I'm guessing that not all of you are English speaking first language, and spelling something like Thatcher and even knowing who the hell Thatcher was is probably a big ask. So helicopter it is. because this insane car has a helicopter engine. And there we go. So now you're into the world of my YouTube recommendations. Right, I think that is it for this week. So thank you very much for watching or listening or whatever it is you do, and I will see you this time next week. For any of you that are Patreon subscribers, keep your eyes peeled. I'm going to try and make a post soon explaining that I'm putting all of the Patreon money for now towards Hackintosh, and so it's up to you guys to control that content, and I'll be putting content for anyone who wants to sort of put in for that Hackintosh content. Then you guys will get it all completely exclusive there. To be honest, there's no point putting it on YouTube, I don't think. So there we go. Have a good weekend, and I'll see you next week. Cheers.